The conclusion to the greatest show in TV history has finally arrived. Because it's such a complex and twisting story, you may be wondering, what the heck did I just watch? Time travel? Awkward family relations? A jacked up time and space continuum? Huh? Let's dive into some explanations for the final season of the Netflix series Dark. As always, these are my thoughts and theories, but I may get some wrong, or I may miss some completely. I might even ask a few questions along the way that I don't yet know the answers to. So please join me in the comments. I really do enjoy the conversation. I love learning from you and just all of the interaction that we get to have. I love how the season begins with a question. I'm going to read it because I want to make sure that I get it right. If we knew how things would end, where our journey would take us, would we still make the same decisions? Or would we choose a different path? Could we even escape our fate? Or would what is deep within us lead us to the same end like an invisible hand? Does it matter which path we choose if we end up facing ourselves again and again? I mean, that really is the theme of the entire show, right? Where no matter what happens, they continually meet themselves again. And no matter what decision they make, that still happens. And they're called upon, especially Jonas, and now in season 3, Marta, to make some tough decisions. And are you willing to make that decision knowing what could come of that? And maybe it's not the best for you, but maybe it's better for everybody else. Are you willing to do that? Something that I've loved that was present in season 1 and then might have had a little bit in season 2, I don't totally remember, but definitely came back again in season 3, is the theme of Ariadne. If you're unfamiliar, it's from a Greek myth, and Ariadne is the daughter of the Cretan king Minos. She falls in love with Theseus, who has gone into the labyrinth to kill the Minotaur. And she helps him by giving him not only a sword, but also a thread so that he can follow his way back, and he can find his way back to her. And if you think about it, inside the cave, there was a red cord tied to the snake thing that was, in the bottom of the cave there, so that Jonas could find his path. So obviously, Ariadne is Martha, Jonas is Theseus, and I think it could be argued that Adam is the Minotaur. I mean, he's the one that Jonas needs to stop in order to be free. In season 1, it could be argued that Ulrich is Minos, because he goes back to beat up Helga, which starts a cycle of violence. And that sets up the disappearance of Mads, which then leads to the disappearance of Mikkel. And now we have the cycle of the labyrinth. And then Adam is born, and of course trapped as well. And Martha just continues to be that driving force for Jonas. I mean, she is that constant thread through everything because they're a perfect match. Never believe anything else. Now, when Martha is doing the play, in Jonas's world, she's wearing a white dress with a black one underneath. But when Jonas sees her perform it in Martha's world, she's wearing a black dress with a white one underneath. What I really like is especially in season 3, is the backdrop is the cave. At least it really looks like the cave that's under the power plant. It's very sinister looking, and you can kind of see it weave its way up, and there's a little hole at the back. Now, sure, it could be argued that that is the labyrinth, and yes, the cave is a labyrinth in and of itself, because if you look at the map of the cave system, it's all over the place, and that's why Jonas needed older Jonas's help at the very beginning in season 1 to find the pathway. And if you're looking super quick, when Jonas walks in Martha's world to Martha performing or practicing really Ariadne, you see a girl, brief glimpse, who has a red slash across her face in the exact spot, same form and everything that Martha later receives from old Martha or Eva. We have the 3 unknowns, and it is revealed that they are the son of Martha and Jonas. I guess maybe they have no name because they technically aren't supposed to exist, but I love the confusion that they caused, at least me, as they showed up in different times to clean up different messes. I'm going to touch on one in just a little bit of one key moment that if they're not there and they don't do, how it changes a whole lot of different outcomes. On the whole, they really did confuse me. Like, I didn't totally understand all of their purposes. I mean, obviously cleaning up some loopholes or just some loose ends, but I liked that they were responsible for at least a portion of the book that Adam and Claudia carry around. And one thing that you probably noticed is the mirrored world, and that's Martha's world. That everything was really a mirror image of Jonas's world, the world that we have known and grown up with, so to speak, in seasons 1 and 2. Staircases are facing the different way. Rooms are oriented completely opposite. Colors are shifted so that they're no longer blue, but maybe now they're yellow. And probably the most important, or at least the biggest clue that you could see from people to know where they're at, is their scars would change sides depending on which dimension, which world they were in. I think one of the most important scenes in the show was the very last one with the characters sitting around the table. Now, sure, could they have ended the show with Marta and Jonas kind of just disappearing off into time? Yes, absolutely. They totally could have done that. And I think it probably would have been somewhat satisfying. But it leaves still some questions unanswered. There's not a concreteness to a certain number of items that by having them at the dinner table, this really does shore up. I'm going to try and keep this as straight as I can, but to begin with, Ulrich, he doesn't exist. Why? Because Bartosz never goes back. So if Bartosz never goes back, there's no Hanno, who becomes Noah, and more importantly, there's no Agnes. Agnes is Ulrich's grandmother. So without Agnes, there's no Trante, however you say his name, who is Ulrich's dad. So now we have no Ulrich, which that means then there is no Magnus, Martha, or Mikkel. And because we don't have Mikkel, we don't have Jonas. And then Hannah doesn't travel, so as in time travel, so she doesn't go back in time and hook up with Egon and then have Celia, who then has a child with Bartosz, which really is then Agnes and Noah. And then we have Charlotte, who is probably one of the weirdest timelines, at least from a family tree standpoint. Because there's no Noah, he can't take Elizabeth, who is Charlotte's daughter, back in time to become Charlotte's mom. And so no Charlotte means no Franziska or Elizabeth. Helga is now normal, or at least as normal as he could have been. Why? Because Ulrich wasn't there to beat the crap out of him. And he can't have committed murders, or realistically, he doesn't commit the murders because Noah is not there to influence him to do so, to take the boys, to do the experiments on them, or to try and get the whole portal open. Doris Tiedemann doesn't have an affair with Agnes because Agnes no longer exists, and Egon Tiedemann doesn't have an affair with Hannah because Hannah hasn't time traveled back. So in theory, they could have stayed together, even though we're not really shown that, because they were kind of unhappy even before all of this. What about Alexander, or Boris, depending on how you want to look at him? I mean, he's the same person. He could still come to Winden, and he could still meet Regina at some point. But think about it, because Ulrich doesn't exist, Ulrich and Katerina bullied Regina, which then led Boris to come out of the forest to her rescue, which caused their whole meeting, their friendship, eventually their love. With Boris or Alexander not getting together with Regina, now we have no Bartosz. And in the final scene, we have Regina, who looks really healthy. So couldn't she develop cancer, or doesn't she develop cancer? Well, we're not really told why exactly, but my guess is it's from the power plant. But see, the power plant doesn't exist at the end of season 3. Why? Because the unnamed 3 don't exist. So they couldn't go back in time to influence the city planner or whoever signs the permits and approves them to allow the nuclear power plant to be built. Because if you remember, it was denied. And so Bernd Doppler could not start the nuclear power plant. It was all the coal workers or whoever was blocking it. And so the power plant now no longer exists. So no power plant, no accident. No accident, no radiation, no God particle, no time travel. Switching gears a little bit, I love the interaction between 2019's Katerina and her mom in 1987. I mean, geez, it's very brutal. But what that does is that sets up kind of an Easter egg from what we hear in season 2 while Bartosz is swimming with Marta, and he's talking about like the lady in the lake who you can kind of, when the water's clear, you can see her clothes at the bottom. Well, guess what? That's Katerina. She is at the bottom of the lake, at least before everything is wrapped up. And that also provides the impetus for Jonas to find the St. Christopher medal to then give to Martha, which then makes its way back and forth between the two for eternity, at least until they stop the timeline. As the show begins to wind down, we get the revelation that Eva is working, or has been working, just as hard as Adam to keep the cycle going. but they each only want their own worlds to go. So they are truly at the battle of each other, but every step that they make continues the cycle, even though they believe that it's ending the cycle for the other party. Only until Claudia steps out, because she has gone through it so many times and she's able to pick up on little pieces here and there, and she finally discovers that, oh, something else is there. It is not just linear anymore. It's not just a duality, but there has to be a third dimension for it to exist, for anything to exist. It's the tracheta. Now, this really should have been obvious to me, to maybe everybody. I don't know, maybe you already picked it up. But from the very beginning, because we are shown the symbol of the tracheta at the very beginning, and then we're shown it throughout. But I think I was stuck that it was just on time, because we're shown years in there. So we're shown 2019, we're shown 1986, and 1953. So there are the 3 points, right? Never once did I think about Jonas, Marta, and the origin. I love the twist that it becomes that it's actually Tannhaus, I think that's how you say his name, Tannhaus, the clockmaker, who really has started the entire thing, that he is the true origin. I mean, he's lost his family. He's trying to get them back out of his grief, his utter desire to do whatever it takes to bring them back, and inadvertently causes a rift and a split in the space-time continuum, and you have now the 3. But I think what I really like so much about it is that throughout the seasons 1, 2, and even parts of 3 is that he's not a time traveler. He's just a guy who has been instrumental in helping them take the steps to go along, all the while in his own true reality, the origin, the one place where everything is still real, is that he's working on something that's actually going to break it and cause everything else that he's been taking part in. I like that we're reinforced that time will not allow Jonas to die while there is an older version of himself still living. I mean, he can't hang himself, he can't shoot himself, even others can't shoot him. I mean, that's why Noah in season 2 can't execute Adam, because there's still another version of him, an older version, still alive someplace. Something to consider in this is that you can't be killed while an older version of you is existing. Well, how is Martha killed at the end of season 2? Well, that's because there's only one of her in that timeline. She's never actually traveled and stayed and had a loop going. She traveled someplace and then she came right back to where she was. So when she gets shot, she's dead. I love the use of the symmetry that they use throughout the show. I mean, we see it just in some of the shots where everything is centered and aligned, and so you see not quite mirrored images, but it's very balanced. And then obviously between Jonas's world and Marta's world, where it is symmetrical, that they are mirror images of each other. When taken, they go like this, but then they, you face each other, and what's right is left in one world and what's left in one world is right in the other. And that also plays into the mourning. At the end of season 2, Jonas mourns Martha dying. Right there, I mean, he's saying all those words. And then when Marta comes in and kills Jonas in front of Marta, she grieves in the exact same way. She uses the same words. And I just love the symmetry that they share between these two worlds. Even Adam and Eve, they are opposing sides, but they are equal in what they are doing. It's their destructive power and their enduring of the cycles. We're never really shown how Adam becomes really disfigured. I mean, we're given a small hint or a glimpse maybe when Jonas is climbing up the kind of, I don't know, Tesla coil tower type thing, the electrical conduit in 1908-ish, and his arm gets slashed by the electricity. So maybe that's what causes it. I mean, I'm not sure that it really matters, but I would have liked to have seen the progression more and more. I mean, we get it once when Hannah comes with Celia and Bartosz tells her that, you know what, you're not really going to recognize him because it has taken its toll on him. And so he's mildly changed, at least in comparison to how we've seen Adam the entire time. But he's drastically changed from how we last saw middle-aged Jonas. So I got a question that falls within that same category, or at least that time frame there, is when Adam kills Hannah, when she comes to visit with Celia, he takes Celia. And does he take her back to 2020? Because it kind of has to be around that area, right? Because then Celia goes back wearing Marta's clothing and she meets Bartosz. And that's when they then have Noah and then Agnes. So did they show Adam actually take Celia to the future? Or is it just kind of implied because now we see her there? Either way, I mean, maybe you know, and maybe you caught it, maybe I missed it, I blinked or something like that. I would love to know that part of it. Now, can we take a moment to appreciate the story of Waller? And really more so the fact that we never learn what happened to his eye. I mean, we're almost told in season 2, and then him and Clausen almost run over Claudia when she's walking across the street. And so we never get to find out there. And then again in season 3, they finally ask and he says, okay, but you have to keep it a secret. And then the thunder crackles and the power goes out and the conversation is lost. I mean, I laughed out loud when that happened because it cracked me up, it frustrated me, but I thought, you know what, that's a funny way to never tell us one little part. I think that's all I've got for this. I mean, we could really dive in more, I think, if we wanted to go deep into season 1 and season 2 combined with season 3. The series has such great lore and such great storytelling throughout it. I'm amazed at how they were able to tell a cohesive and a coherent story in such a manner that is wildly complex, but still you can follow to some degree. And I also love the conversations that it generated based on seasons 1 and seasons 2. I mean, maybe there will be some more conversations started now in season 3 of maybe even some conspiracy theories, or no, I think it really meant that. However that is, maybe you've got that and I'm sure I missed something. So let me know. Let's continue this conversation down in the comments below because I love reading them. I love figuring out what did I get wrong? Where did I miss it? Maybe I got something right too. And just learning from everybody because that is so awesome because what that does, that deepens my appreciation for my already favorite show. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.